right, friends of the barn, Haynes Maxwell here with Byrd. Bryan Byrd, whose dad is Larry Byrd, not
Yeah, he is. Thanks, Haynes. Nice to
not the
be on here.
basketball. So somewhere in Idaho. So where are you exactly, Bryan? I don't know. I just know Idaho. I know it's a weird looking state.
It is weird. We have a northern border, and it's about a 14-hour drive from my house, which is in Meridian, Idaho. And we have a little bit of a nonprofit in Emmett, Idaho, which is a sister city. And but we're all of our guys are collected in the Treasure Valley, which kind of anchors around Boise, Idaho, the capital.
Gotcha. So one reason we've connected, it was really kind of funny. I listened to uh, Becoming Good Soil, Morgan Snyder's podcast with you and your buddy down in San Antonio, I recall, talking about this fires movement. And then I reached out versus email. We connected, and I think I said something like, "Hey, if you ever have a reason to be in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, come share some things with the barn." And you told me your dad, who we knew your dad. I didn't realize. So it's a small world after all.
It's a super small world, Haynes. My dad's been talking to the barn, going to the barn off and on for many years, and has been a big fan. He's over at Morningstar, but had known Kevin for a long time, and has been influenced by the Wall of Heart message and the things you guys do for a long time, many years. There's lots of redemption stories that have come out of the community out there in the barn. So we appreciate you guys, and it's great to
Yeah.
be on.
Amen. So I know you and I talked a minute ago about jumping right in. So tell us about to the fires. Tell us about the fires. What have you guys been doing? I know Wild at Heart, John Eldridge and his crew have kind of adopted that, and it's I think it's on fire. I think the fires are on fire nationally. But tell us what that is and how you guys how that started with you.
You bet. Haynes, COVID took a toll on everybody, everything in a lot of different ways. One of the things we found, no church, no connection, no community. Our guys were hurting, loose affiliation of friends. And we said, you know what? Let's go meet in a barn. And my partner, Jeremy Morris, has a huge barn that had at one time had dirt floors and was falling down. And he had a dream. And God told him one day, you're going to restore this barn and you're going to host my presence and you're going to bring men in to find healing for the hopeless.
Oh.
And it started with a dream many years ago. We got this property, probably forgot about the dream for a while until he started to rebuild it and poured some concrete foundation, put up some lights and some deer racks, and there's horses outside. And he said, let's meet in the barn at COVID. Let's meet in the barn. So okay. We didn't really have a plan at the time, but we knew we needed to get around a fire. We knew we needed to give a guy a place to put the phone in his pocket, turn it on silent, leave it in his car, get in a masculine environment, put up some cool lights, not we don't need bling bling or any of that highfalutin sparklies. We need freaking flames and barnwood and horses and tack and leather and a place to be guys where, you know what, if we cuss, we cuss. Hopefully it's with purpose and a reason, but a place where authenticity can be held, a space and attention where you can just be you and share your story. So COVID forces us into a barn. It's part of this dream. 3 guys show up for 2 months, and we're like, we met like probably twice a month for 3 months, and no one's showing up, and we thought, oh, we're a bunch of failures because no one's coming. Little did we know that there was sacred times where we started to build and figure out what was needed. And the guys who started coming just needed a place. They didn't need 5-point sermons because they could get those online. You remember COVID, we all had our favorite online streaming services, and we could listen to Rick Joyner up the street. We could listen to Bill Johnson. We could listen to Andy Stanley anytime, anywhere. And
Yeah.
streaming got real popular. Guys didn't need that. They needed to be heard. They needed to be seen. They needed a place where they could come and tell their story, not only their wins, but their sufferings. And they could gather around and would have a safe place where guys would listen and they could find hope. So Haynes, that's what we started doing. We said, we could, and all of us were teachers. It was Jeremy Morrison, Mike Evenson, and Nick Meyer. All of us had taught. Some of our guys were at lay pastors and could really teach up a hot sermon per se. But we needed guys to be real. We needed guys needed to be seen. They took their coats off. They got around a fire. We like this propane fire in the middle on the concrete in the middle of the barn. We gather some chairs in a circle, and we start. And what we've been led to, where God took us was, you know, you have a story to tell. So if you're going to lead this thing, you got to risk it. So we started saying, hey guys, I am struggling here. This is how I'm experiencing my sonship. And we started to share things like, you know what, I'm struggling here. My wife and I got in an argument and things aren't going well. And I'm sick of church and I'm tired of people giving up on me. This is how this has happened. And we get real fast. And that's how it kind of ignited and started. Guys came and said, hey, I don't have to fake like I'm disappointed in my life right now. I said, no. In fact, you get that poser off and you come with your real story and you're going to find healing here. And when we started to shift from teaching, come and see, to come and share and see others and be seen, the whole thing took off.
I like that. So it wasn't come and see, it was come and be. How about that? I'm going to trademark that. Yeah.
T-shirt.
Yeah, that's good. So tell me, as I mentioned a minute ago, the Wild at Heart group has kind of grabbed onto this, and you can find hundreds. I don't know. You can find fires now all over the country for a guy that says, I'd like to gather some guys around a fire to just share stories. How would you encourage them, and what would you tell them as far as how to get started?
Haynes, that's a great question. You know, we've had 150 fires or so in 3.5 years. And there's some ways to do a fire that are going to be and to gather that are much more intentional than just telling, oh, we're going to get together and light a fire and tell stories. Well, that's part of it. Right. But the other part of it is we're in a kingdom with the king. You know, this isn't just we have guys that are celebrating 10 years sobriety and they love their AA. Yeah, I'm sure you have some guys in your community like that, right? 13 years, 14 years of sobriety, and they come to the barn, and sometimes there'll be a guy there with beer and a cigar, and we're okay with the tension because we want to create an atmosphere, a culture that gives men choice, that believes in the power that when good men make good choices, we release freedom and inspiration, encourage and hope to everyone, and that's not following 27 rules and being perfect. Perfection gets left at the door when they walk in the barn. That's being authentic and knowing that you can make great decisions. So in those fires, we try to create an atmosphere that says, come as you are. We're not going to promote getting drunk. We're not going to promote smoking up everything you can find. But if you have a good cigar, you smoke them if you got them. Heck yeah. If you want to enjoy a good beer over discussion, please. We're going to invite you to be authentic and to introduce you to the Father and go from there. And we're going to let the rules, kind of take care of themselves. Now, why I bring that up is it's more than just story. And we have some core values. Every time we have a fire, Haynes, we have core values that we live by. Everyone who comes to the barns hears them. And they're simply this. When you operate, we want to hear from your story or want you to listen to another guy's story. We don't need 5 points of freedom in a sermon. What we do need is for you to operate on core values, and they are story. Hope comes from hearing, Haynes. I am encouraged when I hear your story talking about you going to Bend and being with your daughter because you felt like you were led to be there for the birth of your grandkid, and you had to be there. I am encouraged in my faith because you shared with me that you listen to God. I can hear from God. Story matters. Now, the second core value, so thank you for that. Second core value, humility. It's the door to authentic relationship. Every time guys meet, we go over the core values. You got to come in humble. Everybody, whether you're making a ton of money, whether you're not, guys like to hide behind their job titles and their responsibilities. But as you said, we want to know how you're being and who you're becoming. And that comes with third core value, honor. Honor each other above self. And there's two more core values, and I'll let you jump in here. That last two are hope. Hope comes from guys telling their story out of brokenness, redemption, and winning with humility, because it leads to the Redeemer. As I said before, we're a kingdom with a king, but without the Redeemer, there's no redemption. It's just a bunch of behavior modifications. So everything goes towards the union with God. So those core values, every time we have a fire, online or off, in person, around a barn and a fire, we go over this. So guys, we're going to operate from this. And when they break, us as leaders, we say, hey, we're going to operate around those values. And if you need to talk the whole time, maybe this is a great time to practice humility. We're going to let this other guy talk for a minute, and we have to jump in and remind guys, and we practice those core values. So that's how we set our foundation with our fires. And it's a little bit intentional, but with enough room that a guy can share authentically.
Yeah, that's so good. I think of some of our guys, I'm picturing at the barn when we get back, but guys north, south, east, west from the barn and in the Charlotte area. One of our buddies, Justin, he, as I mentioned to you, he'll send out a text saying, hey, I'm getting ready to start a fire in my fire pit in my backyard. So I'm thinking a guy like that to start out, just invite a few friends and see where it goes. Because from what you said, you started out with just 2 or 3 guys.
Just 2 or 3, Haynes. And it's interesting. We've kind of went through 1 through 10 and put down the things that worked and things that didn't work. And I'll be happy to go over a couple of those with you. One was, we got simple rules. We don't want preaching, we don't want teaching, and we don't want advice per se. We can get that a lot of places. It's very important. We value it. But when you get around a fire, eventually, you get too much of that. People think, are you being authentic? Where are you living from? We want to hear your story. We want to know where you're struggling, where you're winning. And really, where's your union with God? Is God influencing your decisions? And if not, why not? And I want to get hope just hearing from you, and you're going to have hope hearing from me. And the other thing is, story's always king. At a fire, one man can tell one story at a time, and we can help learn to tell their story. And, a man's story is the most faithful witness of God's glory. Revelations 12, right? I mean, and when you can honor other men and be yourself, those are the things that have really worked to get guys to come back. Because once they find safety, once they know they don't have to show up and have their 27 rules of behavior modification met for the year, and they know they're not going to be judged because they want to have a cigar and sit down and talk and maybe crack a beer. They know they're not going to be judged, but they know there's going to be tension holding the lines for all the guys in sobriety who are 10 years deep, 1 year deep. We're going to hold that line thick sometimes, most of the time. But they know it's a safe place for them to be. They will come back. And it's not a high bar. They say, Jesus, come into this, be the ruler of this. I'm submitting my cloak. I'm submitting the way I have to look good. I'm going to come and be real. It's the magnetism of the authenticity that will help guys come to a fire.
Yeah, that's good. So you guys, so tell me out, and for those of us that might be swinging through Idaho someday, what kind of schedule do you guys have for your fires?
You bet. We have them 3 times a month. Usually it's the second Wednesday, the 4th Wednesday of the month, and usually a Monday. And we pick that on cadence, and it's on our website. Our group is called The Wild Courage, and you can go to our website under events called thewildcourage.life, and we have events, and they're always posted on a calendar. And they're in Emmett, Idaho, which is a short drive from the Treasure Valley that's centered around Boise. And that's in Idaho. We also have fires around the nation. There's partners. We've given retreats on what I've just talked about, how to actually host a fire. You're really talking about how we host the presence of God. How do you take your union and walk with God and give that away and be so full, no matter what's happening in your life, that you can be a resource to other guys and lead them to the same throne that's gonna give you that resilience. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Can I practice my union with God in a way that helps others do the same thing? And One of those ways, Haynes, so again, the schedule, it's on the website. Please come, but we have them all around the nation. And we've actually connected ourselves. And you mentioned our friend Jay Heck of Bean Sons. There's a lot of guys been doing fire for a long time. But the reason you and I got connected, besides my father living right down the road from you, is that while the heart, the big machine of men's ministry, John Eldridge and Morgan, they met with us early on. They said, what you guys are doing is awesome. We want to do the same thing. We're going to turn on our community. We're going to give folks what they need, training, content. They do obviously Wild at Heart are some of the best content makers out there for men's ministry. And they put on a series of podcasts and a series of materials that if you go online and find them, they'll send you a box. If you want to host a fire, they'll send you a lighter. They'll send you copies of Wild at Heart, Becoming a King, and they'll give you some tools. If you don't know what to talk about around a fire, you can crack one of those pages open and read one of those questions, and you can get started.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's good. On your 3 fires a month, are they different guys? Some guys come to more than one, or how do you structure who shows up when?
That's a great question, Haynes. We encourage guys to pick one, but the guys that are getting most affected, they'll go to all of them. And sometimes we gotta say, hey, we need to have some space for more folk here. But I can talk about a friend, first name Doug. Doug started coming, and I have his permission to share his story, by the way. Doug started coming on Monday nights 3.5 years ago, downtrodden. He didn't have a great relationship with his family at the time. It was negative. He'll tell you the stuff that had come out of his voice and of his mouth was not life-giving. He was on the bottom of the rung. And he would spew that sometimes, and we gently encourage him and say, Doug, we love your story. Keep sharing it. We're going to give you some hope. We'd point him towards the cross. We'd put him towards folks that could help. And Doug, through 2.5 years of coming to the barn, our barn, and coming to the men's, he started to see others with hope. And as you know, Haynes, when you get a group in a barn around a fire with a bunch of men, you hear one guy's story who's gone through whatever it is, gone through addiction, gone through a hurt marriage, gone through brokenness. There's another guy across from that fire who's on that same journey. He might be a little before that story. He might be a little after. He may have had a successful marriage he's worked through by seeing a counselor, by getting in the word with his wife, by changing things in his life to level up his life, to find healing, to find Jesus come in and save his situation. Well, Doug started to see that. Doug started to meet other guys that were ahead of him. They had great relationships with their family, but they didn't. And they started to fight with them. They started to pray with them. They started to show up for him outside of the group. And a brotherhood formed. And a long story made short, Doug has got with a counselor. We refer folks in our barn and our meetings to counselors, and we have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of them that are great resources. And he started to see one, and he started to put in the work, the real hard work that comes with a counselor who's going to call out your stuff and say, hey, why aren't you showing up? And what did you do today? And getting some accountability. Anyways, 3.5 years later, Doug's done the work. Doug says he's as happy. He's over 60, by the way, when he started this work. So all those folks who say, I'm too old, forget about it. Forget about it. You're just getting started and you're on time. And because of this brotherhood, the exchange of hope, Doug did the work. He's as happy as he ever can. He's finding healing in his family because he heard the story of a guy, what's possible. He heard hope and possibility across from a fire 2.5 years ago. And he didn't stop showing up, Haynes. He kept coming and coming and coming and showing up with consistency that you need to find life and healing in anything you do. That was a long answer to your story or to your question.
That's good. I love that. So Bryan, you're having fun, loving on the brothers, getting real. Dial back, I assume a year or 2 or 3 or 4. When did this whole identity, freedom, warfare, brotherhood, those are some of the topics I assume have touched your heart. When did all this descend upon you?
Yeah, all those topics and more, of course, Haynes. I I'd have to go back to around 2006. I grew up knowing the Lord, but I also grew up not knowing my heart.
Yeah.
And in 2006, a neighbor of mine, a good friend of mine now, passed me the book Wall of Heart, 2006.
Yeah.
That's a lot of years ago. And I read it, and I read it again, and I read it again. And and there's so much anointing on that book. I started to realize that my heart matters, that there's more to life than a title, a responsibility, and the car sitting in your driveway, and that your heart matters so much, and that is good, and it's not all evil, and that there's God placed a call and a belief, and he named you before you were in the womb, and he has a plan for your life, and he and this message just of the true gospel just overtook my understanding of who he was. Like, there's a God who can actually talk to you in heaven. I can hear from him. The sheep know his voice, and I'm like, he's like a shepherd, and I'm the sheep, and I can hear his. Wait a minute, this is too good to be true. Yeah, and I was just overtaken by the message of the gospel that Wallet Heart guys presented, and started to lead men's groups for a long time. And read Wallet Heart, we'd read Captivating. I had 17 guys going through Captivating at the same time, and understanding our wives' hearts, and started going to events out in Colorado, and really I got to know Morgan and John and Bart and all those guys, and Alex and JD, and said, we're gonna do something in Idaho. And then, about 4 years ago, beginning of COVID, a little bit before that, I met Jeremy Morris and Mike Evenson and said, we have to get around a barn and a fire, and they said, let's go. And we needed a place to be real, a place to be seen. And quite frankly, there was a lot of guys coming out of church hurt, church splits, and doctrinal issues, and division. And I also came out of some church hurt, that things are dividing over, the color of the cup they used at communion, stupid stuff. And then
Yeah.
more theologically divisive stuff, like praying in tongues, and when you do it, and all kinds of stuff. And we kind of came out of a lot of those seasons thinking, no, we're tired of fighting over this. We really don't care. We need to find a group of guys that want to find union with God. They really want to walk with God. Like, I want to know how I can pray to God, I can hear from him, and I can actually ask him about how I should parent my son, my second born versus my firstborn. I know there's folks out there who have this all perfect, but we didn't have it perfect. and their personalities are different, and there's different approaches you need to take. And we sought counselors, but there's something about having access to the Most High God in your story, who can redeem upwards and downwards in your generational line, Haynes. And so the Wall of Heart message gave me so much hope, and it got me around other guys that wanted to walk with God, who came through some similar theological struggles. But then for my own family, my dad, Larry Byrd, lives right down the road from you, right down the road. He's been going to the barn for years and has been talking to me about it for some time, about all the redemption and the healing and the camaraderie and the brotherhood and the connection that happens when you rally around the heart. You invite Jesus in to simply come and heal that, and to live authentically out of that. And so I've been affected so much, not only in generations, but also in the friend groups, that really got me into men's ministry, into the heart, and into seeing people's stories be redeemed.
That's good. So what does as you look ahead, do you have any thoughts on where you guys are going, or has God put anything on your heart? I know you're connected all over the country with you've helped encourage other guys to start the fires, and I'm not sure we clearly said it, but at wildatheart.org, at the top of the page, there's a button called Fires that a guy, actually John Anderson, with I think the group called Servant. There's a couple guys here in Charlotte that have helped Wild at Heart with some of their website design and user experience and all of that. But yeah, if you look at the fires tab on wildatheart.org, it'll show fires all over the country. So whenever you're traveling, business guys, find a fire.
Absolutely. Haynes, we when Wild Courage started, we had like, 2 fires where you have like 30, and then Wild at Heart came and supported and turned the machine on, and there's thousands and there's hundreds in the US, but I think we're close to 1,000 worldwide. I might be overstating that. Check me out. Check me. Go to the website, check it out. But there's hundreds, and there's multiple countries, and there's every state's got a few in that you can find. But Visions for Wild Courage here in Idaho, a few things. We really, really, and I'm in line, and I'm kind of participating heavily in this lane, is to train guys how to not only to start a fire, but what do we do when we're 6 months in and talkative Tom comes and takes over the fire,
Yeah.
and wants to talk about his story? What kind of skill sets do we need as leaders to say, hey, Tom, I love that you want to share your story. A great way to practice that core value of humility and honor is to honor that guy across the fire and let him tell his as well. And we'll get back to yours after the fire. Like, it's really, there's some leadership training in there. There's some grace, but there also is some confrontation that needs to be done well by leaders in groups, who need to run these groups well to have a successful fire, to honor each other, and to get close to God. And as leaders, we are looking towards training leaders on to run small groups, how to light fires, and how to really walk with God in union, so that they can facilitate these fires on anywhere they go, whether that's their hometown, whether that's on the road, whether that's in Zoom. And so to do that, we have a couple things going on. One, Jeremy Morris hosts a podcast, the Wild Courage podcast. It's on Podbean, Podsprout, Apple, all the venues that hold podcasts. And we really want to share stories of hope. And he has some of the best stories on there from horse guys like Buck Brenneman, Grant Gollier, horse whisperers. There's Vietnam vets. There's all kinds of guys that walk locally. I got a session in there, a episode in there about doing a good job as a father. And we host. So Jeremy does a good job of going around hosting stories and getting guys to listen and say, hey, if you think you're the only one going through your trouble, come listen to a few of these. There's hope on the other side of your story. You're not alone. There's other guys that have been there, gone through it. Come listen to get some hope. And of course, our vision is that there be a fire around where that guy can go. So we're training fire leaders. We're hosting podcasts, and we do put on a couple retreats a year. We just had our last retreat 2 weeks ago. They always sell out. They're always full of story, and it's a weekend of finding hope, no matter where you're at.
Yeah. Wow, that's good. Sometimes people show up at our barn, probably at your barn, and we kind of joke over the years, like we don't really know what we're doing, but we are actually very intentional about some of the things we do. And this weekend, we had a couple of our friends from Zoe come in, and we did a Saturday morning. We did a 4-hour deal on, they call it medic training, but part of what we did, we talked real frankly about the small groups at the barn. So we'll watch a 20-minute video at the barn. We may have 30, 40, 50, 60 guys. I don't, it's against my religion to count them. I don't ever count them, but we break into groups of 5 or 6. And what we talked about this Saturday to the guys, to me, because I'm a big wuss when it comes to a guy will start talking, and I'm thinking, surely you realize how long you've been talking, and you see there's 6 other guys in the group. So surely you're going to take a breath. But I'm getting better at helping him take a breath. But we talked about the guy that won't talk, the guy that talks all the time, the Bible answer man, the guy that says, "Oh, I hear your story, Bryan, but man, that ain't nothing. Let me tell you about Brian Regan. Let me tell you about my 4 wisdom tooth. Don't come in here with that 2 wisdom tooth tail." And so we're trying to do better. I mean, we've been doing it every week for 18 years, and there's still every week there's something going on where it's like, man, and I speak to myself. Sometimes I need to grow a couple to say, hey, the guy that starts his sentence saying, hey, this has nothing to do with the question you just asked, but I'm getting better at going, you know what? Why don't you hold that thought? Because we just watched a video where a guy's talking about being a poser. And we really want everybody to share what that looks like for them. And if we don't do that, the guy's going to go off for 10 minutes talking about some sermon he heard online that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. So, hallelujah.
Haynes, we totally relate. You know, as we walk down this road, one of the biggest skill sets I think we've learned is that you have to know when to be firm, and we refer to our core values, and you have to know when to let a guy talk because he's being authentic and he needs 20 minutes, and that's a balance you get through
Yeah.
leading other men, and God will lead you the right way. But if you don't do it, if you don't hold a line, if it just gets messy and can take away from what God's doing. So there's a tension there that we're learning every day to be better. And so I totally relate to the one-uppers and the talkative Toms and all those guys that can kind of poke their head out once in a while.
Yeah. It's pretty exciting. And we've just started something. We've got some guys that have been trained pretty extensively as chaplains, as people dealing with crisis and trauma. And part of the word we put out recently, and again, reemphasized this weekend in our little training deal is, hey, if there's a guy that walks into the barn for the first time, this might be his last stop. He may walk in getting ready to pack his bags and leave his family. He may be. We had a guy at my church years ago. He was fist bumping on Sunday morning. God's good, and he says God's good, and you say all the time. Yeehaw, that's true. Well, 3 days later, he shot himself in the head in his front yard while his wife and daughter were screaming at him not to do it. So we talked about that there might be a time around a fire or around a barn meeting where a guy, if you detect he's really, like we had a guy a few weeks ago talking in my breakout group about having some recent thoughts of suicide. And he felt like he was in a pretty good place right then. If he had been in a bad place, what we're trying to do is say, you know what, Fred, if you'd like, let me get you with chaplain over here, and you guys might want to sit down and hash some of that out right now. it may not wait to the end, but as our friends at Zoe say, the answer to every question is walk with God. So it's one of those, right, trying to discern in the midst of the flow of the evening, does this guy need to sit with someone right now? Can you hold that story to, because I'm sure it happens with you. I mean, we got guys will stand in the parking lot to midnight or till 1 a.m. till next day if you need to unload something and it's critical.
100%, Haynes. I appreciate you sharing that story, and it's real. And for the listeners they're following the statistics, suicide and self-harm, and it's only going up. Yep. And post-COVID, it's something that we need to pay attention to as men's Christian leaders and have the skill sets and the resources. You know, in our community, there's suicide hotlines, and I'd ask the guys that are leading groups, do you know what your suicide hotline is? Do you know who you could count on if you encounter a guy who's dealing with suicidal tendencies and thoughts? Yeah. Go find them. It's happening. And but I did want to share this. We had a guy in one of our retreats come and I got to sit and counsel with him. And at our retreats, we share each other's stories. We go around and we give about an hour and a half time to share a story. And he couldn't look me in the eye. And there was a lot of silence. Like on podcasts, it gets weird when there's silence, right? Well, think about trying to look in a guy in the eye and he won't look in your eye and he backs his chair away out of the circle. And there's a minute of silence. And I had the opportunity to come next to him. And a lot of times we think we got to just use a bunch of words and be great counselors. And I got the opportunity just to move my chair over to his and take my shoulder and just touch his shoulder. He's still looking at the ground. He won't look at me. I said, I see you. You don't have to say anything. I'm going to sit with you right here because I care and you're valuable. and you're worth it. And you're worth it. So we sat in silence for 10, 15 minutes, as
Yeah.
awkward as you think that could be.
Yeah. Well,
And we kind of finished the session, and I didn't know how it landed. Didn't really look at the eyes, but we kind of hugged it out. And you just never know in those situations. But at the end of the retreat, um, the guy looked over and said, "You know what? I have hope now. I have hope. I have hope. Thank you." And that was it. Simple gesture.
yeah. I was sharing with a guy the other day, and I'm certain you feel this way too. I told a friend, I said, God could have called me ministry to middle schoolers or foreign missions or whatever, but it's such an honor that God has me, and I'm sure you feel this way. I know a lot of the brothers I hang out with that we get to be in the foxhole and in the mess and in the in the joy and on the roller coaster ride with men, because I'm so biased. I think it's true. When I was up in Bend, Oregon, I was with the guy up in Redmond, and they have just started a church called The Gathering, which I love. And he said, there's a handful of men. And he said, we made it when we decided to start a local congregation. We said the focus is going to be on the hearts of men, period. That's the focus because everything flows from that, right?
Yes.
The marriage and the family and the friends and the marketplace. And so I'm some days I pinch myself going, wow. And we're an all volunteer army here at the barn. So some people preface this kind of comment with, and I get paid to do this. Well, we're all volunteers. We get paid rich dividends in our hearts and in kingdom currency, I suppose. But it's such a joy. And it's been so great to connect with other guys. For me, there's been a rapid increase in the last 12 months. As I shared with you earlier before we started talking, I ran into you guys, some guys in Franklin, Tennessee with a barn. We got some brothers that left here, went to north of Indianapolis, and they've got a barn going. And just to find like-hearted, like-minded men, barn or not, around the country is so encouraging.
Yes.
And I know
Yes.
you're in the middle of that with I met a bunch when I was at Turkey Creek this time last year. There were about every other guy I met was from San Antonio, so I don't recall if I specifically met Jay, but I sat at a breakfast table once. It was me and about 8 guys from San Antonio, so I know you're connected with those guys down there.
Yeah.
So hey, any final words of encouragement to the brothers? We can wrap up and let you go back to your horses, and I'll go back to something.
Haynes, well, first of all, I wanted to thank you for coming on. It's been a real pleasure and a real joy to speak to you. And I just wanted to bless and thank you for all the seeds. You said 18 years in a barn, and that you can't speed by that comment without saying thank you. Thank you. There's a lot of guys around the world, in South Carolina, online Zoom, internet, that are better men, that have become and are becoming because of the sacrifice and the seeds that you sowed a long time ago. And you never gave up. You never quit when it got hard. You never stopped when my dad walked in the bar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
And today's a significant day. Actually, yesterday, as you and I talked earlier, Kevin Kasner, who founded this brotherhood after his friend gave him a book called Wild at Heart, said, I've never told you to read a book, but friend, you got to read it. So he read it. So yesterday was the 12-month anniversary of Kevin finishing his battle with cancer. And as I wrote on Facebook yesterday, leaving this broken world. So we think of Kevin often and the guys that have come before us. And I was just fortunate for many years. I think I was Kevin's caddy. We'd stand up front in the barn Tuesday night and before guys came, I would come in, I'd hand them a 5-iron and say, hey, just hit a nice gentle draw over the trees, 200 yards right under the green. You can do it. And I'd give him the 5-iron, and then I'd step back and he would do his thing. So I was honored to, I suppose, be a wingman, and I've gotten more involved, as have a lot of other guys in leading the mission here. And as he was sick, and then we think often of things, and I'm reminded, and I'm older than you and most of your guys, but I think at some point in our journey we really get a real sense of we are all just passing through.
Mm-hmm.
We're all passing through, and it's a great joy to be on this journey with the men here and with guys like you, kind of virtually.
Amen.
we're,
Amen.
we're on it. We're on it together. So look forward when you have a reason to come here and see the Byrd family here in the Carolinas. We'll be sure to have you come by, and if you can work it out on a Tuesday night, we'll be back in the barn. Part of our vision for the barn, we used to do every Tuesday night, and then Saturday mornings. A couple churches that did not have any men's ministry said, "Hey, could we meet at your barn?" We said, "Sure." But our vision, as we get this place rehabbed and up to code to make the county happy, I think most of us would like to see ministry going on every single day of the week here, whether it's women's group. We've got a 37-year-old former Marine, if there's such a thing. The Marine Corps guys tell me there's no such thing as a former Marine, but a 37-year-old Marine fought in the Middle East, and he's got a real passion for ministering to veterans. And his buddy is with a group called Truth in Nature. It's a national group. They're going after the hearts of 13 to 17-year-old boys without dads.
Wow.
That's what I think that's accurate. And I had them here 2 weeks ago. I said, dude, here's a cool place to bring veterans. Here's a cool place to bring the kids. I'm looking at a foosball table right over here. We're going to have a disc golf thing. We got a basketball hoop. We have fire pits. When we're at the barn, we got Chad and Chadwick and some guys cook out from 6 to 7. We have a big man food. So it's just crazy. And I know you guys are doing the same thing out there. So that's my story, Bryan Byrd. I'm sticking to it. Thanks
Well, Haynes, thank you.
Time.
Yes, sir. I can't wait to get out there, and hope to have you on our podcast soon. So thank you so much.
Hey, we appreciate it.